Hello everyone, my name is Josh, and today we're going to be looking at Series 7, Episode 6 of Inside Number 9, Wise Owl. Now, I was going to make a Bioshock joke by referring to the actual plasmid gag where, you get the fire throwing ability, where the infofilm goes, light up foes to 1,000 degrees, warning, fire spreads. And I realised that wouldn't be a very good thing because I do often these videos in one long take. It can be very difficult to kind of edit in between these things, but hopefully as I get used to this format and used to actually structuring my videos and referring to notes and things like that, I will start to include editing software, and I will actually include cuts, and I will include, various different takes of things. So hopefully if this all gets off the ground and I get, enough subscribers and more people want to see my content and what I have to say, I will be quite happily, do that. So yeah, I'm doing all this in one take. So yeah, that's the reason why. But I'm going to talk about one of my favourite episodes of Inside Number 9 called Wise Owl. And this follows a man by the name of Ronnie, who is quite simply a loner. He kind of is this very awkward, very kind of shy. He's one of those people that if you were to meet him in real life, he'd kind of be one of those people who would hold himself like this and kind of, look down every once in a while, maybe look up, like with this sort of deer in the headlights type eyes, where they're very kind of, sharp and very kind of wide and bold, and they'll probably look down and all those sorts of things. He's that type of character. He's a bit of a loner. He's a bit of a social. He's a bit socially awkward. And he's played by Shearsmith, and he kind of is a bit of a loner and a bit weird. Like, whenever he interacts with people who aren't people in his immediate family, he'd always say things like, oh, I don't talk to strangers, and, Wise Old Owl says I shouldn't talk to strangers, and things like that. And it really does make you think, oh, this is the type of episode that it's going to be, where it's going to be like, oh, because the majority of the episode has this framing device where we occasionally see these very cartoony sequences which are meant to be public information films, or PIFs, as I like to call them, for short. And they mostly talk about very casual dangers. So they were made in the 70s, early 80s, all the way up until the 2000s. And they were produced by the Central Office of Information. And they mostly were designed to warn people, specifically children, of the dangers of everyday life, like stranger danger, not to go near ponds, not to play near railway tracks, or even go on pylons, or electro type, antennae things, like, signal electro pylon things. And these episodes were really these particular films were very effective. The one that I remember very well, I wasn't born in the 70s, I was born in the 90s, but one particular public information film crept into my life one day, and it was a simple PSA. It was featured on the 100 Greatest Scary Moments, and it was called The Spirit of Dark and Lonely Water, and it's basically about a Grim Reaper who is watching over the children and seeing these children drowned in very horrific ways, and basically taking them away. And the whole entire perspective of that was to basically warn children that death will come for you if you're not careful, and if you don't, heed the warnings of nature and say, this is dangerous, don't play near ponds, don't play near rivers, it's very dangerous. So it got the message across. But the way they did it, it was very much reminiscent of the film Don't Look Now, where a hooded figure kind of looms over children and kind of, makes you feel very uncomfortable, because obviously it's about children dying, which is a very, controversial topic in its own right. So this particular public information film did a really good job of really kind of bringing home that idea. It scared the life out of me, and I was a kid in the early 2000s seeing this, and I was so, put off by, and especially the simpleness of the image of the hooded figure, like just the hooded figure just standing there, and that moment where he turns round and it just zooms into the hood, and then the hood turns into just rags gathering the pond. It's such a fantastic shot. I just really love the filmmaking in that particular public information film. And you can clearly tell that they were very much influenced by stuff like that, but more specifically, they were influenced by things like Charlie Says and things like that, where a cat would, warn the audience and the boy would tell through a series of meows, and the boy would tell, Charlie says you're not supposed to go near water, Charlie says you're not supposed to talk to strangers, and things like that. And it really is effective. And to really kind of compliment the guy who did the animation on this, he did a really wonderful job of kind of recapturing the flavour of those types of, Charlie Says type animation styles. And it really did a really good job of re-giving subtext to the type of world that we're in, where we're going to be talking about public information films, we're going to be dealing with that sort of stuff, that strange danger stuff. But they do it as a really good foil for what's actually coming, because I literally thought at some point they were going to say, oh, this is a guy who clearly, grew up on these films, and he clearly took a lot of their information, a lot of their wisdom, air quotes, to heart, and he kind of has lived a very sheltered and very overly cautious life, to the point where he hasn't lived at all. And I thought that's where the episode was going, but then throughout the course of the episode, things get a little bit more sinister, and as the public information films are given the chance to be fleshed out a little bit more, we realise that these aren't actual accurate public information films. It's kind of like the rose-tinted view of a very much traumatic childhood, we realise. And the film is actually the episode is very well done. It actually feels really good to just see these characters. And of course, Rise Al is voiced by Ron Cook, and I don't really know who he is besides this, but I'll never hear his voice again. I'll never hear Ron Cook's voice again and not think of Wise Old Al now. Like, I'll always think of when he says stuff like, oh, Wise Old Al won't let you at one point, won't let you do this at one point. I thought, that's really bad. That's really creepy. But I really do love this episode, because it does something really wonderful, which is it talks about the trauma of abuse, but it doesn't try to glamorize it in any way. It doesn't try to say, oh, this poor person. It doesn't try to say, oh, doesn't this feel, edgy? Aren't we really saying something? It's told in a very simple style. And the character of Ronnie does have a very traumatized childhood, but it really does kind of affect him in a way where he's literally had his life ruined by this particular incident that happened with his father. And his father is the voice of Wise Old Al, ironically enough. And also, he did something really horrible with Ronnie, and he also did something equally horrible with his daughter, who is Ronnie's sister. And I love the parts in the public information films. The kids who perform those sequences did a really wonderful job in terms of the voice acting, and the actress who voiced Ronnie's sister is really sweet, especially when she says the words "I'm 6." I absolutely found that really adorable, and it was really sad. I mean, it's a really sad episode because obviously something really horrible happens in this episode involving these two children, and it really does make me feel really sad and really awful for these characters. But what I really do love, and what I think it really kind of puts it a tier above something like Thinking Out Loud, is when Ronnie has the opportunity to confront his past and actually challenge his abuser, he doesn't kill him, which I like, because often a lot in media, especially in stuff like Joker and what have you, they tend to often say that just because you have mental health problems, that means you're going to... It gives off the implication, at least, that that's the case, that you're going to be, a psychopath or a murderer if you are, if you do have mental health problems. And I think that's a really horrible taboo. And this episode broke it. They broke it and said, we're not going to have Ronnie kill or confront his abuser in a very aggressive way. He does have a knife, but he doesn't kill him with it. He basically says, you know what, enough is enough. I'm going to confront you. I'm going to go to the police. And where he keeps convincing him that, no, don't do this. You're making a mistake. Imagine what will happen to you, what happened to your mum if this happens. Wise Old Al basically just pulls out all the abuser trademark cards, like, oh, what would your parents think if they found out you did this? And what would it mean for you? You'll be on your own. No one will believe you. They'll believe you over me, and all these other things. And it really is quite powerful, and that ending, and I'm going to talk about the ending because I think it's very important to bring up that point that I made in my overview of the Thinking Out Loud episode. Was I really didn't like it because it kind of gave the implication that she had to kill her abuser in order to make sure that, she could find peace, which is okay from a frame device standpoint, but I just think the way it was handled, it just kind of felt very very kind of negative, or it could very easily be read as the having a lot of negative implications in that. But what I really like about Wise Out or Wise Out is that they really kind of say that he's actually become stronger because he wants to, go and confront his abuser. And it's a fantastic episode. I really do think it's a really powerful episode. It's really beautifully animated. The animation is really gorgeous. I have to take my hat off to the person who did the animation for this because he did a really good job. And to really kind of, give us that style of animation that's very much like a Charlie Says type cartoon, but it's very old fashioned and very much kind of, done with little bits of paper apparently, and it's very well done. It's very well animated, but the story is very compelling, and it really kind of gives you the sense that Shear Smith can act. He can really give a good performance, and his performance as Ronnie, as an adult Ronnie, really is sad to watch because you really are basically seeing a man who is still a child in his head. He's still a child, even though he's grown and he looks like a man. He is a boy still. He still is a boy. He's frightened. I mean, when he when he talks to the neighbour, he basically stays behind the door and he says, I shouldn't talk to strangers. I'm not meant to talk to strangers and things like that. And he clearly does have this very kind of late bloomer type feel to his to his character, in the sense that he hasn't really quite grown out of that childlike state that he's found himself in because he's been so damaged by what his father's done to him. And it really is incredibly sad. And of course the trauma of having to see his sister go through that horrible moment where no one could help her. Like there's one scene where she lights the candles on her birthday cake and she uses the box matches and she ends up causing a fire. And it's horrible because when her dad, who's supposed to be her saviour, supposed to be her hero, is upstairs doing inappropriate things with her brother, it really does make you think, how could you do that? How could you not only let your child die, but also pin the blame on your oldest just so you could save your skin, save your career? That is the most despicable thing I have ever seen anyone do. And I know it's only a show, but I just kind of think to myself, people have done that. People have done that where they've just totally, thrown people under the bus, totally, minimized or, looked at something on a smaller scale than the reality, just so they can save their careers, or just bribed people just so they can keep their careers and just so they can keep, doing the stuff that they do. And I just think, well, don't do them. Don't do these terrible things. And then maybe you'll get a career, maybe you'll get some respect. So that's probably one of the things that I do like about this new culture where we're starting to call people out on stuff, because there is actually, an aspect where they actually are calling out, really bad people. Like really bad people have done very terrible things, like Rolf Harris and Jimmy Savile, even though Jimmy Savile didn't necessarily, he didn't get his comeuppance because he was dead before anybody could bring him to justice. But it was only until after he died that, people started to, come forward and say, he did this to me. But that was because he had such power in the entertainment industry, and many people respected him that they wouldn't believe, that they feel that it wouldn't be believed. And that's really, horrible, and it's really dark. But this episode shows that no matter what you do now, you can, overcome this. You can overcome this abuse. And I will say that if you are easily triggered by scenes of trauma or scenes of abuse, I would recommend giving this episode a skip, or at least give a little trigger warning to people early on, because this episode is really tough. It's a very tough episode to watch, but I think it's so powerful. And it really shows that, Ronnie did get out of that. He did find the courage to, stand up to his abuser. And yes, it might have been very easy for Ronnie to have killed his abuser in a very horrible way, but then he would have been a murderer, and it would have been a big scandal, like, oh, why is old Al killed by his own son, and all these sorts of things, or he would have been stuffed. One of the theories that they were going to play with was that he kills his father, and he ends up stuffing him like an owl, and I thought, that would have been morbid, but that would have been a very interesting ending. Yet, yes, it would have been me going back on the idea of, me, dropping down, thinking out loud, down a peg or two, because of their ending of the main killer killing their abuser, and that being the source of them moving on and being free. But I think personally, it was a good ending in a conceptual way. But I kept on thinking, if we do this, we're just perpetuating the stigma that if you have mental health problems, you're destined to become a serial killer, or you're destined to become a murderer, because that's not what people should be encouraged. That's not what people should be labeling in media now, but they do sometimes. And even though Joker is a great movie, and that moment is a great moment of shock, it still kind of unintentionally adds fuel to the fire sometimes. And I'm not saying that it's a bad film or that people involved are bad for making that decision. I just think sometimes that can be the implications, and it can be very negative. So I'm glad that Steve Pemberton took the high ground with this episode and actually said, well, you know what, we're going to have him, walk out on his abuser and say, you know what, get stuffed. Which I absolutely love, because the whole entire theme of taxidermy is a constant throughout the course of this episode. So the fact that, he says the word get stuffed, which is a very, very, very English swear word, especially being used in 70s and 60s TV shows and films, especially the Carry On films and what have you. To use that word and to use it in a means where he's like, oh, get stuffed, like, go roll away and die, you horrible creep. Like that's really morbid, but it really is kind of fitting, considering that the whole entire theme of taxidermy and preserving one's innocence and one's childhood through that act is actually a very interesting idea. And of course, using that in contrast with the public information film format was actually a very good way of tying the whole theme together of preserving one's innocence or one's purity. But in other words, it's still artificial, and it's probably a great way of exploring. It's a great way of confronting the death idea with children, but it is actually involves a very funny scene with Pemberton's character, who's his neighbour, who wants to have his pet stuffed, and he says, we have to do it for our daughter, we're not quite ready for the death conversation yet. And it's one of those things where, well, yeah, you probably could do that, but in many ways you're still also kind of saying what happens when the child asks, why can't my pet move anymore? He used to move, he used to blink, he used to be very playful. Why can't he blink anymore? Why is he now, just a board? Why is he now just stiff as a board? You're still going to have her ask those questions, even if you kind of have that idea that, oh, we're not ready for the death conversation yet. You're still going to have to ask that question. It just feels very very weird. So yeah, I do think this is a great episode, and excuse me. Yeah, I do think this is a great episode. I'm probably gonna have a drink now. Yeah, it's a great episode. I really like it. It's very dark and it's very unsettling. So if you're very easily triggered by scenes of trauma or scenes of abuse, especially child abuse, I would recommend giving this episode a skip. It's a very hard hitting and very harrowing episode. But I really do think it's a good one, and I think it's one of Steve Pemberton and Rhys Shearsmith's best, and look forward to more videos. And I've been really happy to have looked back on this particular series and just gone through every season bit by bit per episode. If you want to see more Inside Number 9 stuff, I would heavily recommend checking out Stu Bagfall. He does a lot of Inside Number 9 series reviews, and he's just a great reviewer overall. So, Stu Bagfall, if you're watching, I hope you create more interesting content. You're a fantastic YouTuber, and I would also recommend Unleash the Ghouls, who do all kinds of, horror-themed and thriller-themed type content. They've done a lot of honest reviews of Inside Number 9, and they've done it kind of like me, where it's been a series overview or a series review overall. But I really do think they do a great job with the content, and they're really great guys overall. They're really fantastic in terms of content that they make, and of course they do Nightmare Fuel, which is kind of the ties into the theme of this particular episode, which is all about public information films and these ode to public information films, where they do a video, a Nightmare Fuel video on the Spirit of Dark Colony Water, with Donald Pleasance doing the voice of the Grim Reaper himself. And I really do like the fact that they've actually talked about that particular video too, because it needs more recognition. It was terrifying. I was watching it as a kid in the 2000s, and I thought, this is actually really creepy. Was this what people considered PG back then? Like, it's really haunting stuff, but it's brilliant. And I thought, pat on the back whoever thought this up. Like, honestly, it's amazing. So yeah, I'd highly recommend that channel, and I'd also recommend Wee Lin, who also does a lot of number 9 episodes, a lot of episode breakdowns, and I'd also recommend the podcast Inside Number 9. You can watch all of their episodes on YouTube, and you can get the insight and the latest scoop on how Shearsmith and Pemberton actually came up with these concepts and these ideas. It's a really good one to watch, especially if you're a creative or an aspiring writer like myself. It's a very good podcast to check out, and I hope you enjoy this video and look forward to more very soon. Take care and bye.